Hello and welcome. You're about to see yet another great dialogue between myself and best-selling author Xavier Ayral. After the great and historic success of our first interview on this channel, we managed to find some time yet again to speak about these times, these prophetic times that we are living in. I just wanted to make this very brief introduction to the video to make you, the viewer, aware that with his very busy schedule, and for me also trying to find time, we did do an interview during the week, but it was cut short due to other commitments. And therefore, the very next day, Xavier gave me another hour of his time. But through the editing stage, I've blended both together as best as I can in the time frame that I have to bring up the main topics of discussion with cutting here, changing to there. And I just want the viewer to know that I'm trying to put as many things together in the very precious time that we have, both he and I, to make this for you. And please, in the meantime, don't forget to subscribe, share the video far and wide, because the amount of things that we are talking off camera for the upcoming interviews and videos, you do not want to miss it. But here is the blended two interviews that we put together for you, the viewer. Thank you. God bless. Hello everyone, thank you for joining us for this other video. As you can see, we have the one and only Xavier Ayral back with us after joining us just a couple of weeks ago. The videos have been most popular, the feedback has been amazing, and I cannot wait to have this other discussion with Xavier tonight. And thank you, Xavier, for giving us your precious time once more.
Thank you. I wouldn't miss this for all the gold in the world. I love the Scots.
Oh, I'm loving the French more and more. And after a recent trip up to Scotland, I'm back once again with your book. So I'm going to be looking over it one more time and starting to put the markers and the highlights now. My father did borrow it. My aunts have received a copy. Everyone's talking about it within the MacLean clan. And I was just wondering if you can give a special shout out to them and also to my Aunt Margaret, who read this full book in one evening.
I sent a big kiss, French fashion, Norman fashion, to your Aunt MacLean and to the MacLean clan last. This is from the heart of a good Frenchman, saying my very best and my warmest regards to the entire MacLean clan, and in remembrance of the old alliance between your glorious country and mine. And I'd like to add one more point, just to let you know, Scotsmen, proud and glorious Scotsmen, that we French have never forgotten the fact of the matter that every king of France, starting with Charles the Seventh, who was served by Joan of Arc, and ever since Louis the 16th, every royal guard were Scotsmen, because no braver fighters could be found on the surface of the earth. So again, on behalf of France and of the good Frenchmen, thank you, and we remain your friends and allies.
Perfect, thank you. And after having a recent trip back up to Scotland, my wife and I visited Edinburgh Castle, and there's the big Royal Scots Dragoon Guards and all the history of the museum. And I saw the famous Waterloo painting of them on their horseback marching in to help the French. And I'm like, that's what Xavier must have been telling me about.
Well, Waterloo, the Scots were not on our side, but
right, that shows you how ignorant I am.
we respect them. We respect them. And the strengths of the Scots, and still, the French do not forget the old alliance, AULD, between Scotland and France.
Excellent, laddie. Oh, wonderful, wonderful. So it's the most popular videos ever on my humble little channel, and it's a great close-knit community, I have to say. More new people have joined as well, thanks to it, and the pinned comments really highlight something that was always my intention, not just to do a question and answer, but to have an open discussion from two men that have levels of knowledge, that have something about these times that we want to share from our Blessed Mother, from heaven. And looking again just at the index of your book, it's exactly the same ones that are on my videos: Garabandal, Akita, La Salette, Medjugorje. And then, of course, you add in a couple of extras, and one very special one was of Marie Julie Jahenney. And since the last one, I'm going to do a little graphic of the teaching with the timeline. I like them, as people would know, on the channel, just to keep things focused for people to understand. And we had a great open one that I think you were most impressed when I realised the lost letter of Maxim of La Salette that he wrote to the Pope, about how all these things at the very latest would occur no later than the quarter of the 21st century.
Yes.
And then, even if before even thinking of that, then you have Marie Julie Jahenney, where you explained that you took it to be after her death, those 83 years at the most, which would have taken us to 2024.
Mm-hmm.
So again, fits in
Indeed.
Maxim's timestamp, given all that time ago. Take them to one side, even the Garabandal checklist. 4 more popes after John the 23rd. The warning would coincide with a great synod. And I think in recent or later interviews, the visionary says it may occur in an even year. And our friend Glenn Hudson's done things in the files of his channel on his Facebook page where he even, I believe he says it will come within the same calendar year between the warning and the miracle and things like that, based on later interviews and things. It's not a lot to go on in terms of Garabandal thing alone, but just that checklist is now in place. But then you add in Marie Julie Jahenney, then you add in Maxim of La Salette. It's all now. And we don't have to think 10, 20, 50, 100 years away. We've been told first quarter of the 21st century, and all these other things, not coincidentally, but God incidentally, are fitting bang on. And if that's not enough with the timestamp, we're seeing the signs of those times with all the Muslims coming over, and as many are concerned, fighting age men being the utmost majority of that all over Europe, but also the fall of the English Queen. Queen Elizabeth passed after 70 years' reign, and then with the new sovereign would see Britain having tensions with Persia, which we now see as modern day Iran and its minions. And all that's occurred since this October 7th, the feast of the Battle of Lepanto, or the anniversary of it, and the feast of the Holy Rosary. You can't be making these things up. There's so
No.
many things. Where are we with all that now? Where have the updates been? Because the past week I've been in the Scottish Highlands, away from everything that's happening in the world, with faith-based people living their faith in the community. It's a home from home, and the great wonders that's been happening in life still. So many God incidences, and that's always the focus. I come home, things are still tensioned, things are still worrying people. We're still seeing all the bad. What have you been thinking of recently with your own knowledge? Where are we?
Well, at the end of the book, I did a timeline of sorts in the conclusion of the book, making in chronological order as well as I possibly could a series of events that will define where we are right now and what is yet to come. So far, I don't think I've made any mistakes. According to Marie Julie Jahenney, a Breton woman from France, from the region of Brittany, obviously, stigmatist lady, once the Queen of England would pass away and be replaced with another monarch, tensions, of course, in the Middle East would take place between the Anglo-Saxons, the English, the British, and the Israelis, who would be joined to the Anglo-Saxons against Iran, or Persia, as she used to say. There will be a war that will come from there. The Eastern War, the Eastern European War, will spread throughout the Western Europe through a new blitzkrieg of sort, a very quick war that will propulsate the Eastern Europeans, the Russians, all the way to the Ruhr or Rhine River. Before that happens, the United Kingdom, or rather, what we know today as the United Kingdom will, according to Marie Julie Jahenney, implode into 4 sovereign nations. Now, you don't have to be a droid to know what those nations will be. England, Wales, Scotland, and very likely Northern Ireland. Now, so according to her, this will take place. And there will be a great deal of upheaval in what we know today in the United Kingdom according. In the meantime, there will be in other countries of Europe sorts of revolutions, particularly in France, in Italy, in Germany, in most of continental Europe. And the Russians, due to a particular event or the passing away of a particular personality, will decide, enraged, to start a conventional war on the European continent. While there is a war, well, there will be or there is a war as we speak in the Middle East. Now, this war will therefore take place while just before there will be a change of government among other countries in France, where the French immigrants, or as we call them back home in France, the paper Frenchmen, in other words, Frenchmen that are French merely because of the passport or the identity card they wear, but not French of heart, no. Those Frenchmen will revolt, will unite with leftist groups, such as the socio-communist parties in France, will start an anarchy of sorts, will chase the government from Paris, and will take over through a most anti-Christian government, particularly anti-Catholic government. They will martyrize a lot of religious, convents will be sacked, Paray-le-Monial will be burned, the Montmartre, the Sacré-Cœur in Paris, will be sacked and requisitioned by a new socio-communist, pro-Muslim government, which will take the Sacré-Cœur as a new parliament or government of sorts. The Sacré-Cœur, the Basilica of the Sacré-Cœur in Paris, dominates the capital on the largest hill of Paris. You can see the entire capital on top of it. So the new government will requisition that French Basilica, will chase all the Catholics away, and will remodel it in a government sort of parliament in the near future. In the meantime, parts of Paris will be sacked, burned, pillaged. The same thing will happen in Rome and in Germany. Now, all those countries where those events are due to take place, I wonder if it is a coincidence, but they are the principal nations that are taken over by massive volumes of, or masses of Muslim immigrants. The Germany, it's well known back home in Europe that they are overtaken by millions of Turks. In France, it's the old French Empire that is assembled there. Moroccans, Algerians, Tunisians, Chadians, Malians, Sub-Saharian, and so on and so forth. Millions of them today are in France. And believe me, this is a Frenchman who was born there, who lived most of his life in France, who tells you this as a testimony. The immense majority of those immigrants do not hold dear France in their heart. No, they do not forgive us for the humiliation of the colonies. As I suspect the Turks do not hold them, Germany, particularly in their heart. For them, the fatherland, Turkey, the old Ottoman Empire, is home. For England, I understand you have your issues as well, but in order to avoid problems, I will not comment on the situation with the United Kingdom. But I think we all know what is happening there. No? It is well known, even here in the United States. The fact of the matter is, what makes a Frenchman a Frenchman? Or an Englishman English? Or a German, or an Italian? It's the love of the local culture, the love of our history, the love of the sacrifice that our fathers and theirs before them made for a certain ideal of the nation, culture, history. Often I ask, I had a debate shortly with a Franco-Algerian, who was very liberal and said, well, I'm a Frenchman as well, no less than you are. And I said, really? I ask, if you would have lived in the time of the Battle of Poitiers, with King Charles Martel pushing back the Saracens who were invading from a conquered Spain, who would you have fought for? King Charles Martel, or would you have joined the ranks of the invading Muslims? He refused to answer, I regret to say. His silence in itself proved to be an answer to me and to millions of Frenchmen who would be willing to give their lives wearing the colors for France. Now, it doesn't mean that all immigrants are not Frenchmen. That's not so. Being the nephew of a companion of the liberation of Free French officer who found refuge in England during the war, but who fought the Germans till the liberation in 1944, I do not forget that there were Frenchmen, free Frenchmen, who were from Chad, Cameroon, from the old colonies, who joined the Free French ranks to fight Rommel in Libya, to stop the German advance towards El Alamein, no? And who were charging German tanks with bayonets on their rifles, wearing the white gloves and screaming "Vive la France!" While back home there were Frenchmen of many generations' descent who were openly collaborating with the Germans. That being said, we can never generalize, but again I ask, what makes a true Scotsman a Scotsman, or Englishman English, or Frenchman French? It is a love, the loyalty of our national culture, of our national story, history, of our remembrance and gratefulness of the sacrifices that our ancestors did so that we today can live free. You know? So there will be a revolution, and on one instance, on one message that our Lord gave to Marie Julie Jahenney, he even said something which was very, very strong. He said to Marie Julie Jahenney, there will be a revolution in France, if I can call that even that, because there will be, on one side of the revolution, so-called Frenchmen who will mix the dust of their original nations with that of France and will claim that which do not belong to them, but to the Frenchmen who have poured their blood for France. That was clear. At the time, it made no sense. Today it does.
Mm. I just wonder on that note, though, like with the prophecy with Britain and Persia, as Marie Julie Jahenney said it, because modern day Britain, in terms of the warfare and its military might, it's nothing compared to as it was once upon a time, and it fits within the NATO, with America being much stronger and more prominent in that region, especially the past 20 plus years. So I wonder why she focused much on Britain rather than America or NATO as such. I know NATO wasn't a thing then, but I wonder why Britain seems to have this special point when it comes to that relationship or crisis of a relationship.
That's a very good question. I've noticed that in Marie Julie Jahenney's prophecies, the United States is never ever mentioned. So I suspect that in her mind, whenever she heard a message from our Lord mentioning the English, it was probably in her translation or interpretation were the Anglo-Saxons, which probably meant the English and the Americans, since their culture is ever so close. Mm. Although, as I'm sure most English-speaking Scotsmen and English will agree with me, the language between the US and the British are quite different. It's a whole language altogether. But I think that's what she meant in her mind. She probably meant the Anglo-Saxons. It's a very French thing to mix the Americans and the English as calling them the Anglo-Saxons. So I do believe that that's what she meant. It makes more sense. So when she mentioned the English, probably she meant the English-speaking nations, the Anglo-Saxons, Canadian, American, English, rising along with on the side of the Israelis in a tension and a war that will take place between the Persians, the Iranians, and Israel, which at the time, again, was considered sheer rubbish. There was no such country as Israel. It was Palestine. And after the First World War, it was a protectorate entrusted to England, like Syria was entrusted to France. No, Iran was no longer part of the Ottoman Empire, but was not a nation to be reckoned with. It became Iran decades later. At the time, it made no sense. Today, the sense is absolutely perfect. You'd have to be blind or of bad faith not to realize that we are living prophecy. When I used to work with Father Laurentin, as you'll remember on our previous two shows, whom the Americans used to call the Marian Jacques Cousteau or Marian Apparition. He used to say, you know, Xavier, we are right now living the time of admonitions, of warnings. I do not know if I will live long enough to see the time of prophecies taking place. He did not. He passed away in 2017. But I dare say that right now we are indeed living prophecy. And we are seeing the first events taking place first with the disappearance of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, then with a replacement by a new monarch, and with the tensions taking place in the Middle East. I know Glenn Hudson is a friend of mine as well. I feel a tremendous affection for the man. He's a superb gentleman. And he will be the avenue to echo the warning brought forth by Conchita Gonzalez from Garabandal. No, he will be the means of communication of the day, 8 days, I believe, before the event, the miracle on Pine Hill will take place. So keep an eye on him. And he has been very vehement in the idea that there will not be a third world war. I believe that his assessment, and I most respectfully and in a most friendly and warm way disagree with him. I think that he gets that from the fact that when the question was asked to Conchita Gonzalez in 1962, when the Cuban Missile Crisis was taking place, whether there would be a third world war at that time because of these particular tensions, geopolitical tensions. And she asked a question to the Virgin Mary, who answered, there will not be a third world war. At least not from that. But I regret to say that taking a step backwards, there is already de facto a third world war. You don't have to look very far to see it. The Ukrainian-Russian front is certainly not a war between Russia and Ukraine. It has not been since last year. It's a proxy world war between the NATO alliance, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, who are arming to the teeth and financing the Ukrainian nation against a new collaboration, a new alliance of sorts between Russia, Iran, North Korea, and yes, China. This is a world war which we are seeing every day on our TV screens in Ukraine, and also, which I regret to say, the West is losing miserably. The war is already finished. It's over. There is no chance in the world that Ukraine can win this war, conflict, or recover even a parcel of territory. So right now, according to some friends of mine that are active officers in Brussels, in the French army, the Russians have already gathered almost 1 million men, not only in Ukraine, but in Russia, on the border of Ukraine, ready to strike. But according to my French friends in Brussels, in NATO's headquarters, the reason why Putin is not giving the firm order to start an invasion of Ukraine is twofold. Number one, the Russians do not want to govern the Ukrainians. They already have principally the territories they always aimed, except for Odessa, which they want back. The second reason for that is they are expecting and they are waiting for the final results of the American elections, which will take place in November of next year, to determine the next course of action. That, according to some of those officers that are active members of the NATO military headquarters in Brussels, is the reason for the Russians not proceeding forward. And right now it appears that there is no one on the Western Front that is trying to find a diplomatic, peaceful solution to a situation that has no chance to finish in favor of the Ukrainians. The war is already finished, and the Russians are capturing by the thousands Ukrainian prisoners that are not older than 14 or 15 years old. Boys or girls, teenagers, children. It has gone this bad. So I hope that answers your question, mon ami.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for everything you've said there, from the immigrants and things, the migrants, and then Russia and that. There's a few things coming to my mind, and recently, especially since this has kicked off between Israel and Palestine. We're seeing tremendous amount of support for Palestine all across the West, and even here in Britain. I'm seeing cars passing with Palestinian flags everywhere.
Scotland. Wow.
There was a record-breaking march in London just last week, and I think maybe the previous weekend it was, that these marches were shouting for jihad right down on the streets of London itself, and it has been covered on. So they're expecting another one to take place in its big number, and they're wanting to do it on the day of the Remembrance Sunday, which is the annual time to commemorate those who gave their lives for their country during the Great Wars. So that's kind of been controversial topic that I'm gathering just in the past 24 hours since returning home. I have to admit, in the last couple of weeks, especially since October the 7th, I'm more on alert. I am more aware than ever before. And I really think for the first time in at least 10, 12 years, thinking of this idea of prepping, preparedness, all that stuff. But from that, nothing more than the faith point of view of these times of prophecy that you say we're in. And I believe that I'm on the same hymn sheet with you, so to say. I agree with everything. I'm ready at moment's notice right now to go, to get out of harm's way, being down here in England. That's what I feel. I don't know if Scotland will be much safer, but I think it would be in terms of what I think may happen in England. And since the Ukrainian war, there was concern of what Russia may be doing, as Britain is so involved with NATO and everything there in Ukraine. But I'm less worried about Russia's threat to the United Kingdom, and I'm more concerned about this revolution that we've heard echoed from Marie Julie Jahenney, from the Tre Fontane with Bruno, which is one of my new favourites, from Garabandal speaks of a revolution, although it doesn't mention it by specific ways. I really believe that's the spark, especially if Iran goes into this war. That's the spark for France. That's the spark for the UK and these other countries that have taken in vast amounts of Muslim migrants. There's no doubt about it in my mind anymore. I can't shake it off for the past 3 months. It was never there before, coming from even the same sources, but it's as if something's just turned on and I see it now. I can't take it away. Logically, it can't be removed right now for the time that I feel that we're living in. And I'm going to relook at the book then if the timeline's there at the back. I like a timeline. But I'm going to share something as well, and I apologise in advance to maybe other people who are aware of this who maybe not wanting it known. But the person who told me did give me the permission to share it. And the main reason I want to do it is because souls are at stake, human lives are at risk. And what it was is just the past month, a friend of mine went to Medjugorje, and she overheard a couple of people speaking, and one lady was speaking about how something that one of the visionaries were shown recently by Our Lady of what's going to come very soon. And it reminded them apparently of years ago Our Lady showed them what was going to happen in Rwanda when she appeared there in Kibeho, which is an approved apparition. I think they had about 12 years' notice before over 1 million estimated people were slaughtered. It wasn't by military, it was by neighbours, it was by the tribes killing each other. So this friend of mine approached the lady when she overheard, and the lady closed down. She said, I can't share it, I'm not supposed to, I'm sorry. And she left quickly. My friend pursued someone else who's very well established in the parish at Medjugorje, And she asked this person, is this true? And the person just basically says, we can't talk about it, it's not official or anything. But she gave her the nod. And basically, whatever visionary, we don't know which visionary it was, but one of the visionaries basically was so shocked at what was shown to them that they couldn't speak for a matter of days about it. And it was worse than what they saw in the apparition years ago concerning Rwanda, because it was bigger, wider spread apparently, in the same type of nature. And that to me kind of just fits in where my mind is right now about this revolution. And I heard a video today while driving. Your friends at Mother and Refuge, I think it was, posted, maybe it wasn't actually. Another channel posted a video with some nun in Brazil speaking about how they've seen a vision where Pope Francis has been shot and things. And I says to you in the last video when we covered Pope Francis with this prophetic timeline, you know, the two popes of Anne Catherine Emmerich were at the end of the four popes of Garabandal and such. I still sense, without having clear knowledge of what it is, that there's just a subconscious sense maybe that he's fitting prophecy for something. The world loves Francis, although the church may be back and forth with him, but he seems to have appealed to so many hearts that maybe not even of the faith for simple acts of charity and things like that on a human level. And I could see how something happening to him would send shockwaves. Even any pope, the figurehead, it would send shock around the world. And I still see something there that he might be the one fitting this prophecy, because the timeline he's in right now, he's in the thick of it. Unless there's going to be a successor coming very soon, he may be a bridge between all these things happening and may indeed be the one that's been spoken of in prophecies. I still sense that. But and you're hearing these other things as well. In all these 17, 18 years of knowing about the apparitions, looking into them myself, I'm biting my nails now. Not last year, not the year before, not 5 years ago. This year. And without knowing the full timeline right now with the book here, what's next? I mean,
during these tribulation, these times of tribulation, during this sordid war, there will likewise be a terrible chastisement sent from God, which will be a very contagious disease. The Americans call it already the burning plague. Marie Julie Jahenney explained that the symptoms of this disease will be first tachycardia, high blood pressure. It will affect the mind and the way of talking, and it will, of course, irritate the skin tremendously, making a victim think that the skin is burning. Then there will be a sort of a black spot that will appear with a yellow center, and death will sometimes thereafter follow. Marie Julie Jahenney explained that she was told that human medical science, I regret to say, will have no answer to this ghastly disease. However, heaven does. And the Virgin Mary has asked to all those faithful who in faith believe and listen to this message, if they fall victim to this most contagious airborne disease, at the very beginning, before the symptoms appear, when they just begin, at the very beginning stages of this disease, to consume a tea of, and do forgive my pronunciation, Hawthorn leaves. No. Now, the infusion must be made in a specific manner. It sounds quite remarkable, but the Virgin was extraordinarily specific. She asked that water be boiled on a pot with a container, with a top, rather, cover of sorts. And once the water begins to boil, to place on the boiling water only the leaves, not the fruits, not the stems, just even if they are old and dry, it matters not. To throw on the boiling water a certain quantity, she didn't specify how much, but some of those hawthorn leaves, and to place the top or the cap of the pot on top of it, the cover, so that no steam escapes, and to leave it there for 14 minutes, not 13 and not 15, but 14 minutes. After 14 minutes are off, turn off the fire, take off the cover, and start pouring the infusion into a container of sorts, maybe possibly through a coffee filter to take away the impurities, and to apply it and consume it on the person 3 times a day. Now, one of the questions that I've heard in France, in the Spanish-speaking countries, and in the United States quite often is, what kind of hawthorn leaves? There are different sorts of hawthorns, any kind. It matters not. Just hawthorn. And that is very, very important. Follow the instructions. I know it sounds like a plot coming out of Hollywood. No, it took me, I admit to you, Mark, a long time to digest this particular piece of information. But like everything else, if you have faith, one shouldn't wonder. After all, wasn't it God who told Moses to place the blood of the lamb on the threshold of the doors of all the homes of the Jews? That also seems something coming out of the blues, also as a Hollywood plot. I do not pretend to understand the means of God, but I do pretend to echo them. Mm-hmm. And that is one of the particular instructions that heaven, through heaven's first messenger, the Blessed Virgin Mary, has sent through Marie Julie Jahenney.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Xavier. You've answered a few of the questions I already had and what others have been asking, so I'm glad you went on and did that. We definitely love your style. I'm happy with the long-winded answers. We just get everything there. The way you speak with authority and clarity, it's brilliant. Because since we're on the Hawthorn moment then, and I know some people have asked about that on the videos, when I checked it out, there's hawthorn hedges, there's hawthorn bushes, and almost like small tree size. There's is it white hawthorn? There is the Midland hawthorn here in England. There's all different types from what I'm gathering, and even a Google search gives you different leaves and different sizes and images and all that. But even if they're mixed together in the pot, even if it's one kind or the other, it doesn't matter as long as it's hawthorn and it's the leaf only for 14 minutes boiled. That's all. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Some are noticing some of the leaves are actually falling off the bush or the trees right now. For whatever species they have found. I have another friend who, once he watched the video, he went out to his garden and sent a photo saying, "God is good, I have some in the garden." Everyone's on about the leaf. They're taking it well. Just out of curiosity, with your own hawthorn leaves, have you ever tried to boil them for 14 minutes to taste it yet, to see what it's like?
Actually, my wife made me a tea yesterday, and actually it's quite delightful. I find it very pleasant. But I know we are lighthearted, but these particular messages is to be considered a gift. It's a tremendous gift. Keep in mind that part of this prophecy, message from the Virgin Mary to Marie Julie Jahenney, was that human art of medicine will have no answer to stop the spread and the harshness and violence and aggressivity of this ever so contagious disease. So to know that the Virgin Mary is giving us, through these messages, a means to escape death, and a ghastly one as that, is a tremendous. I am ever so grateful to heaven to be able to send us this. I'm a father. I have 2 little munchkins, Franco-American, but more than worrying about myself, I do worry most of all about my 2 children and my wife, of course. So it is to be taken extremely seriously. And I am so grateful, Mark, that you are having these shows, because I do not believe either in chance or coincidence. I do believe that God, as we say in French, I don't know if you say it in English, But we say that God writes straight on curved lines. And I do believe sincerely that everyone who will be watching this show, this exchange between you and I, is meant to hear this message. But with this message and of the Virgin Mary, there's a tremendous responsibility. We are all called at the same time, and not just about the Hawthorn, but about the overall message, the call from heaven for man, for the faithful to convert before there is no time. There is a tremendous responsibility in which everyone who will hear this will have a choice to say, yes, I accept, I will convert accordingly, or no.
Mm.
And the answer will carry a great deal of weight, because as I said a few moments ago, I do not believe for one moment in coincidence. I do believe that everyone that will watch your show, and you broke all records on the first two shows that you and I did, with over 10,000 viewers, if I'm not mistaken. Everyone was meant to watch that, and everyone who will watch this is meant to listen to this and watch this. It's a gift. A gift to finally hear messages which have, on some instances, been purposely hidden by the Roman Catholic Church, such as the approved secret of La Salette, an approved apparition site by the local bishop and by the dicasterium of the doctrine of the faith. There is no excuse. Another example would be that of the third secret of Fatima. In my book, the third secret of Fatima appears thanks to the testimony and the assistance of His Eminence Cardinal Ottaviani. That is also a gift. We are able to finally find out. The message of Akita, also formally approved by the local bishop and the congregation of the doctrine of the faith, the apparition in Japan. Cardinal Ratzinger, the then prefect of the congregation of the doctrine of the faith, admitted openly to Bishop Ito of Akita that in fact the last public message given to Sister Sasagawa on October 13th, 1973 was nothing less than the repetition of the third secret of Fatima. It's extraordinary. We are living in a time, it appears to me, Mark, and I'm sure I would very much like you to tell me what you think as well, but it appears to me we are in a time when that which was secret is no longer today. And that light that was supposed to be placed on top of the bushel is finally being echoed throughout the four corners of the world, because the time has come for the faithful to know what heaven meant them to be aware of. What are your thoughts on the matter, if I may ask?
Yes, I think I've learned in recent years as I've been older and maturer, my brain does take in a lot like a funnel, and not everything always comes out, or sometimes I have to revise a little of something I already know I've done a video on just to remember again. There's so much information. For me, it was always Fatima, Garabandal, Akita, Medjugorje. Those were the pillars for me, like the jigsaw corners. But then you start adding in quotes of Saint Pio, Padre Pio. You add in maybe Our Lady of All Nations, who right now is in a little rocky situation, I believe, with the Vatican. Then you look back to Marie Julie Jahenney. Then you look to one or two others, Blessed Anne Catherine Emmerich. I find her still very prominent for these times. And that's where maybe then to focus on something where I feel, in my mind, something's still there. As I said maybe before, she prophesied a time of two popes, and I know there was another time long gone by, but I kind of find like Akita tells us the full circle things. What goes around comes around. It comes back on us. And even like Akita with the 101 tears of the statue, the guardian angel explained the first Eve, what goes around comes around to the new Eve, where she'll correct it. Something plays out and comes back over time. So we may have had two popes centuries ago. I didn't look into it too much. I think Dr. Taylor Marshall did a video a year or two ago about that and to do with the pantheon and things. I watched a little bit about it. But for me, it was like there are two popes just now. And you have to understand Garabandal with the four popes after John the 23rd. And you have to realise for a little sprinkle, although I don't put weight on it, it coincidentally, or God incidentally, as I say, comes at the time of the end of the list of popes of Malachi, St. Malachi. I don't put a lot on it. That's all I know about St. Malachi, other than the fact he died in the arms of St. Bernard of Clairvaux, apparently. So he kept good company. But we've had the four popes of Garabandal. That people were on the ropes. Is it while Benedict is alive? I think it's been since he has died, because then it's closure. But the timing of his death as well. And I highlighted to you before the little signs, from the stars falling from the sky. I know it means different things in the book of Revelation theologically and whatnot. But for him to retire, then lightning strikes the Vatican, and then a meteor lands in Russia days later, only then for the second meteor to land in Argentina, where we have the new pontiff from. And the March 18th of that same time, someone actually put it on the notes. I said March 13th, Francis was elected. March 18th, Putin was re-elected president. And these are the countries of these men that are having the meteors straight away. But the prophetic timing of Francis with the popes of Garabandal, the two popes of Blessed Anne Catherine Emmerich, something is playing out. And if you look at her messages, she speaks about compromises. It's a key word that she uses, is compromise, just like Lucia of Fatima uses a clear word of a decisive battle. Make your decision. That last battle between Christ and the Antichrist, between his church and the anti-church over marriage and family. We've seen that intensify year after year for at least the past 20 years that I can gather in my 38 years life. But then again, this prophetic timing of this Pope, the parallel of what's happening in the church is unprecedented in what he's enduring for those who believe that they're doing right against him and speaking out against him. But then again, we've got things like the Pachamama and other sorts that really has left a lot of a shockwave. We've seen the church closures. Again, Anne Catherine Emmerich, there's something that's going to split the church into two ways and all that. So this is where my mind is to answer the question. But when you gave his last select, the hidden letter of Maxim to the Pope, and that's where I like to draw the timeline. That hidden letter says at the latest, it would be within the first quarter of the 21st century. So if that's that timeline from then till the 2025, what fits in the middle is everything already discussed, everything in the videos prior, all these major apparitions, and the two popes and the four popes of Garabandal, they all fit in the middle. We've now just seen the 50th anniversary of Akita, and just 6 days before it, on October 7th, Hamas attacks Israel on the feast of the Holy Rosary, also the 452nd anniversary, I believe, of the Battle of Lepanto. And look where it's heading. America doesn't send two naval fleets, two aircraft carriers, and everything else for the sake of protecting this little 20-odd mile strip of a war that's going on right now. And then Iran's taking pot shots in Lebanon or Syria or Iraq on American bases and things. Hezbollah leaders speaking out. Yemen's been firing in missiles as such. This is escalating quickly. And go back what you were saying at the start as well. I'm on DEFCON 2 with my radar right now. That's where I'm at, because even the pro-Palestinian marches, just the past week there was crawling out for jihad down in the streets of London. They want another big one turnout. The record-breaking 500,000 apparently was in that march. They want to do the next one on Remembrance Sunday to commemorate the Great Wars, which again is British culture for all those who gave their lives for their country. Then my wife and I were in Edinburgh for a day last week when we were in Scotland. We met a man who had the parachute regiment beret on, standing at the memorial garden for the fallen comrades. He's in the national news today in Britain. I turned it on before beginning this with you. He was punched and kicked by pro-Palestinian protesters just in the past day or two at the most recent march and protest. The very same man in the very same place I was just 7 days ago. couldn't believe what I was seeing on the TV. And just to add to that, today I was speaking to another man. He's lived here all his life, and he's still growing up within 2 minutes of his childhood home. And now the kids are unhappy at school, and he's already looking to move away. He wants to get away somewhere in the countryside, somewhere away from the Midlands, because the kids are unhappy that they're now the minority of white British ethnicity. It's halal meat or vegetarian only options for dinner, and they've now cancelled Christmas carols in the same school. So much for inclusivity.
My
They're
goodness.
not included anymore. So
This is
that's just one man, one citizen that's it's feeling like what's happened here. And I'm not anti-Islam. I'm not anti-Asian, or I mean, racism boils my blood, and I think the anger of seeing someone targeted for that, taking away their human dignity, there's an automatic reaction of like you want justice for them. That's in the human soul. So it boils my blood to for anyone to be attacked for their own religion or faith, as much as I love my own. And racism, and that's definitely nothing I would ever tolerate. So when I say these things, and for everyone watching, it'll never be about that. Never, never, never. But it's what you were saying at the beginning, Xavier. It's the same as France. France, as Donald Trump says 6 years ago, after the two Muslim men killed the priest, France is no longer France. And that echoes everything Marie Julie Jahenney says. And since being in England, I really see the big, big difference. And I think it goes back again. I know this is a long winded one as well, but I see Garabandal echoing things of Marie Julie Jahenney, but not as clear. Garabandal spoke about a great revolution that would come, and we have an indicator about the Pope coming back from Moscow, which almost happened on his trip to Mongolia. and, but then we've also got, they speak about something where people are going to be feeling burning, that they will jump in the water and it won't do them any good. And I used to think those at volcanoes, the seabed rising with volcanic lava, but why not the plague, the burning plague of Marie Julie Jahenney? Why not the same thing? So
exactly.
we've had the fall of the English Queen this past year, as Marie Julie Jahenney says. Look where Britain relations is with Iran just now. Look what's happening inside Britain itself, France itself. Europe has definitely been invaded with a majority of vast amounts of male fighting age men coming from predominantly Muslim countries. And so to me,
I
that
totally agree.
sorry?
No, carry on. It's fascinating.
Yeah, I just see it now because a few months ago, reading the same sources, the same apparitions, all these years, Islam, Muslims never clicked anything for it. But then in the summertime, that's exactly what it was there, especially with Marie Julie Jahenney, and then with Trefontane, my new favourite apparition. You missed that one out in your book. That's
I
definitely
did.
loving it. And there's two or three other sources that all of a sudden it's Islam Revolution, Europe and Islam, and at the same time Russia. It's exactly what's happening. And yeah, it's very alarming because I was like, well, where's the spark? Where's the spark to have the revolution? What's going to give them? Don't think it would be confidence to try and take over, but it's something they're going to stand up and fight for passionately with their lives if they have to. And that's where I start hearing jihad in London streets. That's when you start seeing Iran being confident, Yemen, the Saudis, even Trump's bashing Biden the past year about how they've lost Saudi Arabia with their deals and things like that. And then the head of Saudi, I forget who it was, one of the kings or the princes saying, we are jihad, we are jihad. They're all saying it, whether it's the people on the streets of London and the protests, or whether it's the prince over in Saudi Arabia, they're all saying jihad. So for me, that's the spark. Something's going to happen with a war with Iran, a devastation or something, and then that'll rise up the Muslims, which will be in Russia's favor to see Europe getting divided and pillaged and whatever else is going to happen. And then that's where Russia would see an opportunity. That's what I kind of.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree with you.
It's good to know. Then I'm thinking, right? Can I
No,
just
no,
note
we're
as
on the
well?
same radio wavelength.
Yeah,
Carry on.
well, that's the great thing about it. That's why I enjoy this so much, and it lets me know in my own little world that I'm not going crazy when I'm speaking to a best-selling author who agrees with me.
Well, you're right. No, you're being very lucid, it appears to me. Regarding racism, I feel like you. I mentioned earlier that I had an uncle who was a compagnon de la libération, a companion of the liberation. It's an order, a military order set by General de Gaulle. The very first member was a black man, Félix Eboué, who was from the French Martinique and became the governor of the French colony of Chad. He was one of the first companions of the liberation. I grew up in France, seeing all men of all colors, black, even from Tahiti, soldiers in short haircut, going to masses, and next to German veterans in masses in Lourdes, looking at each other when the time was to give the sign of peace, to look at each other, those old men embrace, including men who were from Senegal, from the old colony of Cameroon, Chad, Mali, Côte d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast, and so on and so forth. Those men, even in the time when some of those nations, like Algeria, during the Algerian War, some of those Algerians did not want independence. They wanted to serve France. During World War II, when Marshal Rommel, was marching through Libya to reach El Alamein and catch after that, the Suez Canal, there were three Frenchmen, a free French brigade, who stopped at Bir Hakeim, the famous Battle of Bir Hakeim, Rommel, with the Frenchmen from the four corners of the French Empire, who were giving as a response to those German tanks, French infantrymen, black, from French Guiana, red, from French Vietnam, yellow, Frenchmen from France were wearing the white gloves, with the white kepi from the French Foreign Legion and the bayonet at the cannon of their rifles, charging those German tanks, screaming "Vive la France!" So I am hardly either a racist. I think that some of those colored Frenchmen were more French than some of those white collaborating ones with the Nazis, the occupation force in Paris under Marshal Pétain.
Yeah.
So, what I do reproach a large part, an immense part of those incoming foreigners who come to France is not to accept assimilating themselves to French history or to French culture, to our holidays, Christmas, Easter, some of them wanting to change the name of some cities of France that wear the name of saints, Saint-Nazaire, Saint-Malo, and so on and so forth. They're trying to make the French nation adapt to the Sharia, the Muslim Sharia, which is not just a religion, it's a code of ethics. It's a civil code of life. This is, per se, the definition of an invasion. This is not what your countrymen, Scots and English, fought for in World War I or in World War II when they came over to my country to help us. This is not what my family fought for in World War I and World War II. And this is not what I agree serving my country. That's what I am doing it for. However, the messages, the prophecies of the Virgin Mary orbit around one particular idea: hope, not despair, a future, not the past. And particularly, through the Virgin Mary, heaven calls everyone. And I know I always finish my shows or the interviews I'm honored of being invited into. But heaven always asks the faithful who have ears to hear to convert. Because we are about to enter a new chapter of history that will be very harsh, very difficult for every single person, particularly, I am sorry to say, in Europe and in the United States. There will be hope. The King of France will come. The English will get back on their feet, although you'll have to suffer, like the rest of Europe, a great deal. But the message is convert before it's too late. Now, I can hear many of your viewers are saying, yes, convert, convert, but how? Heaven has been very specific for our messages in Akita, La Salette, Fatima, and so many other places. Convert through reading, the Virgin Mary says, and living the Holy Scriptures. By reading and living particularly the Gospels, the teachings of Jesus Christ. By living the holy sacraments of the Holy Roman Catholic and Apostolic Church, principally through confession, preferably on every first Saturday of every month. Convert by asking God, not a priest, God forgiveness through a priest, through the sacrament of confession. And most of all, convert by going to Mass, if you can, every day. If not, every Sunday. Properly prepared, well confessed, and while believing with all your heart that this Eucharist is not just a symbol or a commemoration of the Last Supper, but truly the true body and blood, soul and divinity of our Lord Jesus Christ, and always receive him the way St. Paul teaches us, properly, dignified, prepared in a dignified manner. If you suspect you've ever committed something grave, or if you're guilty of a mortal sin before receiving the body of our Lord, go to confession so that you'd be in a state of grace, then receive the body of Christ. And in other apparition sites, although it's been approved by the Catholic Church in Vatican II that it's acceptable to receive the body of Christ in the hand, the Virgin Mary confirmed that. But she said, it is better, if you can, and in obedience with the local priest, to receive the body of Our Lady's Son directly in the mouth, and if you can, on your knees, the way it was done before Vatican II. But the Virgin added, because it's been approved by the Church of the Vicar of my son, you can receive it in the hands, but I tell you it is better to receive him directly from consecrated hands, directly in the mouth, and if you can, on your knees. So those are the principal keys, the cornerstone, shall we say, of the conversion that heaven is calling us all to leave. Not for them, not for heaven, but for ourselves.
That brings me up a couple of memories recently as well, Xavier, as we can see the timeline of events in the world. We can see the prophetic times of this Pope, this papacy. Even the Garabandal checklist is now in place. The 4 popes, one with the short reign, that's done with Benedict. A great synod, the Great Warning would coincide with a great synod. In later interviews, I believe the visionary says it was an even year. So even next year is the Great Synod, the Synod and Synodality, which is so unique in terms of time and bringing laity and other members of ranks of the church into it together. That coincides next October 2024. And look at everything else that's happening with Marie Julie Jahenney. And like I say, Garabandal seems to echo a little bit of her stuff from these signs of revolution and the burning and all that they mentioned. We can see things happening in the world, but what's really alarming you in terms of what's happening in the church? For me, it's 2 parallels running simultaneously together, world and church together. Are we, with everything in place with Garabandal, and I know I've asked you this off camera, it's up to you if you want to say or your own opinions. I'm very open, I'll say it. But we are as early as to say that with the checklist of Garabandal alone now done, we're just waiting. Could it be as early as next year? Because what I know Pope Francis, according to our friend Glenn Hudson, he says Pope Francis has been trying to get to Russia since 2016. 2017, and what better time for a pope going in as peace then for all these things getting to such a point, we're on the brink of annihilating ourselves massively. For him to go, to bring about a sense of calm, and only then to return, and it all kicks off again. And I still believe from other sources and Bruno, the Trefontane, the Pope is to flee Rome. There's a Pope that may be martyred or shot, where Our Lady's waiting at the end for his sacrifice. I don't know if that was last letter somewhere else with those words about waiting at the end for his sacrifice. Um, there's multiple prophecies, including the ones we've mentioned, that something bad's to happen in the Vatican, something bad is to happen to the Pope. And I do believe in sense somewhere inside, subconsciously or spiritually, maybe, I don't know, that Francis may be that Pope with everything else in place while he's still Pope, unless he has an immediate successor very soon. Where are we with that in the church side of things?
Yes, I agree. I'm working with another seer, well renowned here in the New World, called Father Michel Rodrigue, who had a controversy recently about a prophecy involving the passing away of Pope Francis, taking place before that of Pope Benedict XVI. He did explain himself on the John Henry Weston show, and the situation was cleared. Now, but in regard to the Pope, and first of all, according to this particular seer, Pope Benedict XVI, Pope rather Francis, will be the author of a great many errors. According to him, he was told by God the Father that the day will come when he will finally realize the full content of his errors, and he will try to rectify them, but he will fail to do so. No. He will also pass, it appears, through an unnatural death. Now, in matters of the Synod of Synodality, and then I'll go back to other prophecies. The Synod of Synodality, I'll remind you, there's been on the first half, the second half will finish next year, 54 laic women, not even religious women, but laic women. Laicity, the lay people, have been truly omnipresent in this synod. Now, and now it appears that the Pope is redrawing the rules of the next conclave, involving lay people to participate in the vote of the Pope. A new church is coming out from the ashes of the old one that Pope Francis is trying to erase. Now, the Synod of Synodality. The last I checked, the Roman Catholic Church was not a democracy. The last time I checked, the Roman Catholic and Apostolic Church was a monarchy, with the Holy Trinity being the sovereign of the Church, with the Blessed Virgin Mary being the Queen of heaven and earth, and with the Pope, the cardinals, the bishops being the princes of the Church. Since when are the sheep supposed to lead or suggest where to go to the shepherds? This is the world in reverse. Now, in regard to prophecies with Garabandal, you're quite right. There's one in particular that also was foretold by Marie Julie Jahenney, which was the great warning, or the illumination of conscience, as they call it here in the New World. This monk, this French-speaking monk in Quebec, Father Michel Rodrigue, clearly calls it himself the new Pentecost, where every single human being around the world, whether you're agnostic or atheist or Muslim, Jew, Christian, Anglican, will all see the state of their soul the way God sees them himself, and in all sincerity. And they will know in this span of time, which is supposed to last, according to Conchita Gonzalez, about 15 minutes. You'll know whether after death you will end up either in hell, in purgatory, or in heaven. Some people will be shocked of the result of this experience, but it will be a last moment of mercy that God will give each man and woman to convert, to be finally aware of the state of their soul, and to cleanse all the mediocrities of their lives. Now, you mentioned next year, 2024. I have my opinion as to when this warning, elimination of conscience, will take place, and I sort of agree with you. Glenn Hudson is also a friend of mine. I have immense admiration for the man, and he will be the avenue through which the announcement 8 days before the miracle on Pine Hill in Garabandal will take place. So keep an eye close to him and an ear always open. So on that note, I thank you again for your immense kindness, Mark. I hope, if I'm not too presumptuous, that you'll be good enough to invite me again. We've only scratched the surface of the iceberg. And what's more, I enjoy speaking with you, with the accent of Braveheart and the Bruce. So, you see, I know a bit of your glorious history. And please do invite me again. I enjoy this show tremendously. And I enjoy your viewers. I do like them. I read some of their comments from the past two shows. They are brilliant people. And I hold them and your show very dearly to my heart, as a Frenchman, that is. So thank you for your kindness.
Thank you. For me, in my little humbled little world, sometimes it feels bigger than real, that the fact that I've had some guests on in the past or who I've met, maybe like Medjugorje Visionaries to Marino Restrepo to a couple other people that have been well known. I always used to look up like this as a younger boy and think, wow. But now yourself and them, it's like sometimes I have to pinch myself thinking, no, like, if you've got a heart for God, it will happen. And I haven't even begun to tell the God incidences having time back at my former lay community, community focused on living the faith, and then hearing from friends in Medjugorje and everything else that's been happening recently. The Catholic world, at least, is so small. If you give God your availability, He'll do everything else. And I'm always humbled to the fact that He's using me in any small way. And to have you on the channel, knowing that there's bigger platforms out there, it's just an immense gift. And I'm so grateful. And all I have is the compelling conviction that we have to get everything out there as quickly as possible to reach as many people as possible. And like you say, with Glenn Hudson, when we get the notice for the miracle of Garabandal, he has his Facebook page for everyone there. I also have a Facebook page called Marian Apparitions, where Glenn is also active on as an administrator. And from both of them and everywhere else, and this channel, and Mother Angelica's EWTN, because she promised that years ago her cameras will be in Garabandal. We will spread the 8 days' notice, please God, if we're still alive.
Absolutely. And I ask your viewers, if I may, simply to pray very much for you, Mark. Mark has a definite, without any self-glorification, he has a tremendous mission. And it is not easy because Mark is exposing himself to criticism, even to jealousy, to a great deal of attacks. And Father René Laurentin used to say, anything from God will be under assault by the enemy. Do pray for Mark, if you please, for his family, for his endeavors. And if it's not too much to ask, do pray for me, if you please, and for my family. I would be ever so grateful. And on that note, I thank you very much. And I bid you good day. And I wait for your next invitation, Mark. Laddie?
Always open. Thank you. And if everyone can hit that thumbs up, like, share, and subscribe, you know what to do. There are much more coming. God bless and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.